and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you on CGTN. Today, we'll bring you a special program on how China and other countries have been cooperating under the Belt and Road Initiative. On the sidelines of the BRI Forum last week, Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, pledged to further improve bilateral ties, naming Russia an important partner in the BRI. Earlier, I talked to Kirill Dmitriev, the Chief Executive Officer of the Russian Direct Investment Fund. He shared with me which areas China and Russia can further cooperate. The Belt and Road Initiative, how much cooperation really is there between China and Russia? Can you give us some number?
Yeah, there is definitely lots of cooperation, and we are talking about joint investments in roads, in infrastructure, and there is a broader cooperation between Eurasia Union and Silk Road Initiative. And so far, investment has been quite significant by Chinese companies in Russia, including in the Arctic region. So we are talking about tens of billions of dollars of investment, but we hope to increase it to hundreds of billions of dollars of investment.
What about for the near term? What can be the projects realized?
So lots of it is about infrastructure investment in the Russia Far East. So it's about ports, it's about airports, it's about toll roads, it's about other infrastructure projects. And Russia has a big program of national projects, which is to really advance lots of Russian infrastructure. And we're inviting a number of Chinese investors and Chinese companies to participate in those national projects.
But the thing is, once you put investment there, you want to have a potential to realize the return. So how long will be the term for the returns? Of course, it varies from project to project, but still there is approximately a time frame. Meanwhile, how to make sure it's going to be sustainable cooperation?
Sure. So first of all, we are very careful in project selection, and we are careful in focusing on good returns. And you know, Russian Direct Investment Fund generated positive dollar returns, renminbi returns every year for the last 7 years. And also, Russian government is willing to support some projects that maybe have very little return, but with government support, they become investable and attractive for investors. So it's very important, as you said, sustainability. And we focus to make sure that the projects are good, they create lots of value, and that they're able to, you know, pay taxes so that government can receive its money back through taxes and able to provide good return to investors.
And these also involves the issues such as whether we have only state players here or you're going to have more different kinds of multiple players coming in, for example, the private sector. What do you think? Yeah,
definitely state sectors are important, but we want private sector to come in also quite strongly, because there is a great cooperation on the state sector level, and our state companies are working very well together, but private investors should also proceed with opportunities. And we see a significant increase in number of private entrepreneurs who are approaching our Russia-China Fund to pursue opportunities in Russia, and we hope the number of private Chinese investors also continues to grow dramatically.
Earlier we have seen that the political relationship is rather more advanced than the economic and trade ties. The question really is, do we see the two sides of the relationship now matching or closer to match with one another?
Well, I think you raise a very important point, because there is a great relationship at the top level, at the leadership level, but it needs to also translate into specific economic actions. And we talked quite a bit in the meetings we've had about increased trade, increased investment projects, and there are many that have lots of effects. Russian agriculture products are very clean and have very good quality, and we discussed how to make sure that they have access to the Chinese market.
But what about the other way around?
Yes, and the other way around, we have great Chinese construction companies, Chinese companies that can take advantage of the Russian market. We have signed a very important agreement with BGI, which is Beijing Genetics Institute, which is a top genetics company in the world. And we will grow business jointly in Russia to develop genetics and new technology business together. So there is definitely lots of benefit from Russian companies working closely in China, Chinese companies in Russia, and frankly, much more needs to happen. And by activity of Russia-China Fund, we already invested in 30 opportunities.
Right.
All of them make good return, and we believe that those opportunities are a great example for other companies to follow.
Several things. If we take a look at the world, that China, Russia could work together, but the thing is how fast. One is about currency cooperation. Of course, earlier there were already discussions about that. What is the current stage of cooperation now?
Our central banks are working very well together. There is an interest in Russia to have some instruments in renminbi, and we discussed with China Development Bank how to expedite our plan to have renminbi funding for Russian projects, and CDB is a great partner for us in Russia. So we'll be announcing soon our first project that we fund in renminbi, and I think this ruble renminbi cooperation is absolutely critical.
Soon meaning when?
2-3 months.
All right.
And this will be a very good precedent to have more trade in ruble and renminbi, to have more investment in ruble and renminbi. So we really see it as a huge area of potential cooperation.
Another issue, which is about technology. You mentioned earlier about genetics cooperation, but as you can see, some countries are thinking about the technological Cold War. But the question really is, what can the other players in the world do together in order to avoid a trap of Cold War? What can China and Russia together?
Sure, I think we can show very good examples of cooperation. Another very important example is our partnership with Alibaba in Russia. So jointly with Alibaba and the largest mobile operator and the largest social network, we're building really the largest e-commerce platform. And that's an example of cooperation that is a win-win cooperation. It will help lots of small and medium-sized businesses in Russia to take their products and open Chinese market for them. It also allows Russian consumers to buy good products from all over the world, including China. So Alibaba cooperation, Beijing Global Genetics Institute cooperation, other technological cooperation is very important. And also, for example, you know, we are building even a bridge between Russia and China that just closed, and this will allow lots of products, including high technology products, to travel between Russia and China. So I think the message to the world is China and Russia are showing examples of very solid and good scientific and technology cooperation, and this is the future, and this, frankly, is our competitive advantage.
Right. The other thing, of course, is the strategic thinking about how the world should be like and what kind of aspirations, common aspirations that we could have about the world order. Kirill, as you may know, there's debate about the reform of World Trade Organization later in the year. There's a big debate about that, to say the least. There's also debate about multilateralism vis-a-vis unilateralism. There's debate about the role of the emerging economies such as China and Russia vis-a-vis the so-called old order of the world. So what do you think China and Russia will be able to provide, brainstorm possibilities for the rest of the world? Do they see eye to eye, the two capitals, on these critical issues?
So reform of WTO is absolutely important, and we like that we work jointly with China on many institutes. So we have BRICS institution, which is, you know, BRICS Bank. We have AIB, which is Asia Infrastructure Bank, which is doing quite a bit to do projects, you know, in the region. And that is very important, that we see that lots of world institutions, sometimes maybe they fall behind in thinking about the future. Sometimes they get too political. Sometimes they get really very narrow-minded. And I think institutions we created jointly, such as BRICS Bank and AIB, etc., they remind those institutions that they need to follow time, to be less political, and to be more focused on creating value for the world, for different countries. And I think it's very negative when some of those institutions are used to not promote trade and investments. And by the way, lots of WTO agreements have been violated by the US and by some other nations who introduce sanctions and other limitations. So I think WTO generally is a very good thing, but since we agreed to WTO, you know, the rules and regulations of WTO needs to be followed.
I see. Finally, before we go, peace and stability. So from your job as well, and particularly as an advisor to the president of Russia, what do you make of the latest development? Chairman Kim from the DPRK visiting Russia and discuss with the president, and also about the issues such as the Korean nuclear issue, its potential for the region, particularly for the business environment in the region.
And Russia has been a very positive player in North Korea denuclearization. You know, Russia has taken a very solid approach to make sure that North Korea denuclearizes, but at the same time receive guarantees along the way. So I think definitely a very important positive meeting for the stability of the region, and a good dialogue with North Korea is important. That is of interest of the world, of South Korea. We are working quite closely also with South Korean investors. So we believe that was a very successful, positive meeting.
Kirill, it's always a great pleasure seeing you and talking to you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.